Dmitri Shostakovich. Dmitri Shostakovich was the great atheist composer who suffered under the tyranny of Stalinist Russia, writing music that wryly commented on the totalitarian society in which he lived. He found a way to produce works that could pass for the vapid socialist realist canons demanded by the government, yet still voiced opposition and mockery of the dominant authoritarianism. He did not flee this society, but remained to bear witness to the suffering and bravery of the millions who were prisoners to this grim nation. You won't find much that is light in Shostakovich's work. When it comes time to be humorous, his laughter is often worked into a shriek. Triumph comes not from the forced public celebration, but from the intimate treasuring of the fragility of human tenderness, like a rare and ephemeral blossom clinging to a barren crag. He is one of the great symphonists, completing 15 directly inspired both in style and content by the mighty 10 written by Gustav Mahler. He wrote also 15 string quartets, and these are as structurally dense as his symphonies, and even more revealing in their exploration of Shostakovich's psychological states. There are as well film scores, operas, ballets, concerti, piano works, and pieces written for specific occasions. A wealth of exquisite music that will take you years to fully explore. His genius is to be starkly realistic in his exploration of the context of human consciousness in a universe that is fraught with danger created by other humans, whose goal is control and suppression of individuality. Thus his work chronicles a struggle for freedom that is dear to the hearts of Satanists, who must often hide their true nature from the bigots who have the power to throttle their quest for the joys that life can offer. Let us explore Shostakovich's powerful works from his series of symphonies. At the age of 19, his first symphony made him an international star. It set the tone for what was to follow, wittily commenting on prior works by Tchaikovsky, by using the biting satirical sense one finds in Mahler, but in a uniquely Russian way. It was played the world over and put Dmitri in the spotlight. His next two symphonies, written under the watchful eyes of the Soviet bosses, are attempts to integrate modernist dissonant musical language with messages supporting the glorious communist experiment. These are oddly hollow pieces, perhaps that in itself being a personal commentary. His massive Fourth Symphony, deeply indebted to Mahler, carried dissonant grotesquerie to new heights. Since Stalin had detested his opera Lady Macbeth of Mtsensk, written in a similar style, and to displease this boss literally meant you would be dragged away in the middle of the night to be exiled to die in frozen Siberia, Shostakovich withdrew this symphony before its official premiere, and produced another one far more conventionally tonal, the Fifth Symphony, and it too had the sort of success that the first had achieved. Listen to this work, with its almost Beethoven first movement, stern and well-developed, the Scherzo, a Mahleresque peasant dance, the Largo, a darkly passionate lament, finished by a finale that works itself into a mighty peroration. Of course, those who understand this finale see it as a forced celebration, and conductors who knew the composer play this so that the triumph is more an agonized pounding than an actual victory. His Sixth Symphony used 3 movements to make its point, starting with an adagio plumbing the depths of despair, influenced by the first movement of Mahler's unfinished 10th Symphony. Its Scherzo then continues in the cheeky vein so definitive of this composer, while the finale is a vigorous march, athletic and confident in tone. The 7th, called the Leningrad, was written while Shostakovich was in Leningrad under attack by the Nazis. He volunteered as a fireman to protect the city. A famous picture of him in a fire helmet was circulated for propagandistic purposes. The first movement of what is his longest symphony depicts Russia invaded by the mechanistic Nazis, who are portrayed by a simplistic march that proceeds through a series of pedantic variations, becoming more brutal as it goes along. This march is developed into battle music that finally vanquishes the invader. The Moderato is a woodwind-dominated scherzo movement with a harrowing climax, and the adagio that follows has much poetry and passion. The finale movement brings back the battle, reaching a truly bombastic culmination with the return of the first movement's main theme. This work was supported by the Soviet government and was immediately played in the Western world as a symbol of the Soviet people's struggle against Hitler. Bartok was sick of hearing it on the radio, so he parodied the Nazi march in his own Concerto for Orchestra. The five-movement Eighth Symphony was also a wartime work, but it grimly explores the repressions of the communist regime, ending in a mode that is not shouting victory, but which is more an appreciation of having survived a nightmare, just barely. The government expected a triumphal choral ninth celebrating the end of the war. They got a sarcastic, brief symphony that challenges the skills of the musicians and thumbs its nose at convention. Stalin finally died, and so the 10th Symphony is a personal work, musically referencing one of Shostakovich's love interests and mocking Stalin with a fierce scherzo that ends with a scream. His 11th Symphony is a vast tonal canvas of often quoting Russian revolutionary songs, ostensibly depicting a Tsarist massacre during a protest. But of course it seems aimed at similar doings by the Soviet overlords. It is a long work, but very evocative, almost cinematic in effect. The 12th is much like an agitprop film score, and it has a bombastic finale akin to the 7th. The 13th Symphony is the one work by Shostakovich that should be heard if you explore no other. Based on 5 poems by Yevtushenko, it is scored for a full orchestra, bass soloist, and male choir. Here the sound of Russian Orthodox liturgical singing is absorbed and transformed into a secular Greek chorus, chanting texts damning totalitarian repression in many forms. The first movement is a frightening monument to the slaughter of thousands of Jews by the Nazis at Babi Yar. With its tolling deep bell and explosive outrage, there are hair-raising passages that will astonish. The second movement mordantly speaks about humor, resisting all attempts to suppress it. The third movement sadly depicts the tenaciousness of the women in the Soviet Union who do their best with meager earnings to bring home food for survival. The heroism based on drudgery, so foreign to most Western people. The fourth gets even darker, telling of fears of all sorts, the worst being the fear to speak freely lest one be arrested and slaughtered by those who watch. Finally, the fifth movement begins with Galileo, and then other creators finding careers that makes them curse for being truthful, while yes-men lackeys often succeed over these iconoclasts by catering to society's rulers. The music here is wistful, delicate, ironic, and warm, knowing the scarceness of such bravery in the face of the inertia of collective conformity. It is a masterpiece. The 14th Symphony was inspired by Mahler's Das Lied von der Erde and is for soprano and bass soloists and string orchestra with percussion. It is based on collected poems confronting death in many forms, and is thus a secular meditation on the preciousness of life by examining the consequences of death. The final 15th Symphony sums up Shostakovich's life with musical quotations of his own and other favorite composers' work, with much parody, explosive lamentation, and finally a strange, icy, calm detachment, ending with a warm smile that fades Cheshire cat-like into the air. There is a set of the complete symphonies conducted by Rudolf Balschai, who premiered the 14th Symphony, that are exquisitely played with all the beauty, terror, and mockery required. Other outstanding interpreters are Mravinsky, Rostropovich, Rojdestvensky, Ashkenazi, and Heitnik. And so, fellow non-believers, you will find this music to be worth your while, as it exhibits how an artist of wit and passion can resist dictatorship, to speak his mind, and poignantly capture what it meant to be a person of awareness in a society that destroyed so many who refused to conform.